beginning our practice with heart math and breath work. And so I want to take some time at the beginning tonight to do that. So just let yourself come into a place where you feel comfortable. And you can begin eyes open or eyes closed. And we just begin by placing our attention at our breath. You don't have to change it or adjust it or analyze it. You just meet it. And just see how the breath is arriving right now for you. And as we tune into our breath, we naturally, perhaps, can sense the quality of our nervous system a bit at this moment. And again, no need to adjust or judge, you just sense. And so the process is about dropping into sensation and meeting sensation in this moment. If it feels good to you, you could place one hand at the chest, one hand at the belly, or not. And when you're ready, you can begin to adjust some things just gently, seeing if perhaps you can soften any movement at the chest and allow for a little more expansion around the base of the ribs, especially the sides and the back, as you inhale. And as you exhale, allowing the belly to draw back towards the spine. Begin to notice the pause, the top of the inhale, and at the base of the exhale. We'll start with heart math. And so as you sense your breath and the movement of your body, begin to bring your awareness more deeply into your heart center. And that can be the heart itself or the energetic area of the heart, whatever you relate to as your heart center. And again, we just sense, we just arrive. And then we invite breath into this area. And so as you inhale, it's as if the heart center could breathe and gently expands and opens as you inhale. And as you exhale, softens and releases tension. And as you maintain your awareness of the heart center in sensation, allow yourself to think of something that lifts you up, that brings a higher vibration into your system, something that brings you peace, contentment, gratitude, appreciation, a sense of nurturing, support, beauty, love, joy, whatever you feel your heart could really benefit from receiving right now, and create that clear image. And breathe that emotion into the heart. We're going to stay with this for a little bit. Notice that the mind will drift. It's natural. Awareness will drift. Come back. Keep coming back. When you notice, come back to the image. Come back to that felt sense and breathe it in. And as you breathe it in, allow yourself to truly receive it. We'll stay here for a couple more breaths. Keep coming back to sensation. Keep coming back to the awareness of your heart and caring for your heart by giving yourself this quality of its medicine to help heal and open again and release tension deep within. And in your own time, when you're ready, you can release your hands and open your eyes. I wanted to do a little longer heart math tonight because in the videos, I always feel a little rushed because I'm about to deliver a bunch of information. And if heart math becomes something that you practice, there's really like no specific time of how long you should do it. And what happens when you do practice regularly, or if you give yourself more time when you really need more time, is that you'll really feel a shift in your nervous system. And so just know, if it becomes something that you begin to practice, take as much time as you need, settle in and allow for that shift. That shift then can support you if you're also interested in practicing more subtle breath work. Because once your nervous system shifts and just down regulates a bit, then your ability to access subtle breathing will be a little easier. Okay. All right. So tonight we're going to begin with breaking into a couple breakout rooms. And what we're going to do is share our biggest takeaway from Godfrey's talk on form. So hopefully you got a chance to read that, and let's break out. And I'm going to give it 10 minutes. And if you're going to share, if you could keep it to about 2 minutes. Okay. Well, let's see, how many people will we have in a room before I say that? Yeah. So about 2-ish minutes, just make sure everybody has time and and I'll be jumping around between rooms. Okay, so I'm gonna put you guys in breakout rooms. All right, this is a new thing I'm doing, so give me 1 sec.
This is my first time being in a breakout room, y'all. I missed the Zoom phase. I never had to Zoom for any reason. So yeah, this is my first breakout room.
my first time making breakout rooms, so you and I are.
Congratulations, Samantha. You got this, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'll make it go a little longer because the rooms have gotten bigger as everyone's jumping on. So we'll go longer, but 2 minutes per room. All right, and here we go. You guys going? Is it happening? Oh, it's happening. Okay. All right, here we all are again. Now, I wonder if, so they're gonna all be coming back in just a few moments. I was supposed to jump around. I didn't really get to that part.
We're lucky we got you.
I was thinking of the experiential anatomy book. I don't know if you know that.
I
She
don't.
phrase, it's a beautiful book by this woman from Middlebury College, and um,
Oh shoot, Anne, we're losing you.
hmm, I don't know. My internet. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, put it in the chat. You got a little, maybe it's because we were breaking out from the breakout rooms. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope that was just interesting to be able to talk about that together. Okay, good. All right. So now, excuse me, I'm going to switch subjects a little bit. We're going to talk about movement principles, and we're going to do some movement a little bit at first, and then we're going to do a little more movement. But yes, be able to move. So what I'm going to introduce in this, we're heading in now to understanding what is called vinyasa krama. And vinyasa krama means, as you should have read in the handout, it is about intelligent sequencing. And it's about how we methodically, step by step, move towards a goal. And the lens we're going to use, because there's lots of ways that you could organize for vinyasa krama, but the lens that we're going to use is around joint actions primarily. But before we go into that a little more, I just want to introduce some movement principles that are important for movement educators to understand. And if you guys are teaching asana, then you are a movement educator. You are teaching people how to move. And so movement principles are, and I'm going to give you guys a handout with everything I'm about to say. So don't feel like you have to write it all down. I really want you to feel it more in your body. So movement principles are a framework in how you either progress or regress a movement, how you make a movement more or less complex so that you can challenge yourself or someone, or you can make the movement more accessible for someone, okay? And so the first movement principle has to do with gravity. And we can really say on a functional level, is different than what we were all just talking about to a certain degree, but on a functional level in our body, asana teaches us how to efficiently resist gravity. And what I mean by that is if you go through life without resisting gravity in some kind of functional way, then as you age, I make me the biggest. Hold on one sec so I can see myself. Pin. There we go. Okay. As you age, you will, or someone will, without resisting gravity, you will. This is what happens. Am I really blurry?
You're very blurry.
Huh. Weird.
Yeah, somehow your camera follow with you.
No. Huh. Maybe I have
Try
to move the
unpinning
pin.
yourself. See what happens.
Yeah. Okay.
You might have put a filter.
No.
No.
But the picture was very clear of the aging process.
Yes. Did you unpin yourself?
Natalie.
I did unpin
Oh, your
myself.
camera. Maybe you could unplug and plug your camera, or that's from your laptop.
No, it's my new camera that worked really great when the TAs and I tested it the other night. Oh, well.
Can you
Um,
unplug it and plug it back in? Is it plugged or is it wireless?
Hold on one sec. Let me do this. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to pin myself. All right, well, you got the idea. With gravity, without resisting it, right? That's what happens to posture. And so with asana, we're continually strengthening our system one way or another to understand how we efficiently resist gravity, right? And resist it, and we don't collapse into it. And so where does collapse happen in our body, if it is happening? At what
Well,
places?
the spine.
The
The
spine?
spine.
Yeah, and the spine is composed of
Right.
many
Vertebrae.
vertebrae,
Joints.
which have many joints. Collapse happens at joints,
Mm-mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and so when we resist efficiently, what we are doing is we are stacking our bones efficiently and decompressing our skeleton, right? And so all the soft places around and between joints are their mobility and their support is maintained. Okay. So, and what area of the body, this is maybe a trick question, do we really want to functionally understand how to resist gravity?
The
Is
core canister.
Yes, but it's not the answer I'm really looking for.
like the nervous system, nerve.
I like that one too. It's at our foundation.
Your foundation. That makes sense.
The
We
foundation,
just read
right?
about that. Yes.
Right. Whatever is touching the earth, the foundation, if that is resisting gravity well and efficiently, then it sets. Everything else above has a much better chance of doing so. But if the foundation is collapsed, right? So if the tripod in the feet is supinated or pronated or forward, then everything above doesn't have the opportunity to stack properly. All right, but let's look at gravity for a moment. So we're going to come onto our backs and we're going to do dead bug.
I was just gonna say, Lauren, there's like some fact about skyscrapers. If the foundation is off by the even tiniest amount, it will not stand.
Exactly. That's why you always got to look at
Mhm.
the foundation.
You
All
know,
right.
And Lauren, people can pin you themselves if they wish. They just go to those 3 dots in the corner and then they press pin. So if anybody wants to make Lauren
Oh
bigger.
yeah, please do that. Because I
You
see if
can
I
stop.
seem if I pin me, then I get all blurry.
Also, if you just go to speaker view, everyone, then you can, whoever's speaking is big, and that's kind of nice. Don't pin anybody, just go to speaker view. That's an option.
Oh, I like that. Maybe I'll try that next. Okay. So we're going to start here with our legs off the ground, knees over your hips, ankles in line with your knees, arms lifted, fingers pointing up towards the sky. So here, what is our foundation? Oh yeah, you probably, if you're muted. So I'm just going to speak. So the foundation here is really large. It's our whole back body that's making contact with the earth, right? And so we can't really ground the foundation in the same way as we would with hands and feet. But what now really works to be our foundation in this situation is our core canister. Okay. And so with gravity, we can do dead bug and let's reach the left leg away and the right arm back. Come back to center and move in and out like that. All right. And so we can feel where the gravity is arriving in our bodies, and it's primarily in our limbs. Okay. And now we change our relationship to gravity by doing basically the same posture as we come to all fours in terms of similar joint actions. But now we've changed our relationship to gravity and we've made our foundation much smaller. And our foundation here is our hands, our shins, and the tops of our feet. And here we can do that same movement by lengthening the left leg back, reaching the right arm away, and we feel how much more we have to organize because gravity is bearing down on the core and on the limbs. Okay, so just sensing into that. The first posture, more accessible. The second posture, more complex. And that has to do with gravity. Okay. So now let's talk about foundation a little bit more.
Can I ask you a question, Lauren?
Please, please.
Mentioning how the first posture we were in on our backs was more accessible, and then the second posture was more complex. I'm struggling making sense of that in my mind, because for the first posture for me, I was like, whoa, this is requiring a lot more like attention to my core, a lot more awareness, where the second posture it felt a little more easy. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that when we have, okay, so there's like 5 different things I want to say all at the same time. Let me organize my brain. What makes it more simple and accessible is that your foundation is much bigger. And you have to remember, you are different than a brand new student, okay? Or someone who you are taking into this kind of movement for the first time. So
Right.
you have already a lot of adapted patterning to that all fours situation because you've felt it in your body, your brain has experienced it a lot. And in terms of like safety, and we'll get into it right now in terms of load and things that are coming into the joints, it is a much safer pose. Now, integrating your core, it puts you in a situation on your back where you're going to feel your ability to integrate your core perhaps a little bit more. And that has to do with a different principle called lever. And that's the thing. When I'm teaching these movement principles, they're all sort of happening at the same time. So the only thing I was really trying to teach about that was the experience of gravity, but the foundation is much bigger and therefore it is a safer place.
I see. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense of just like, comparing the foundation. One was bigger, one's not, as you only have palms and knees, and
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And you have the ability in the second one to collapse your core a little more easily without noticing.
Okay.
It's easier.
Yeah.
So you can
Okay.
cheat.
You can cheat really easily in that second one. And
Oh.
most people do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like collapsing at the spine. Well, I'm sure.
Yeah, collapse your spine. In terms of that whole core canister integration, you have much more gravity bearing down on it, and it's hard. You can move around it more easily.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much. That was super helpful.
Okay, so foundation. I feel like I'm really blurry again, but oh well. You guys get the gist. You know I'm here. So our foundation is any part of our body that's making contact with the earth, and therefore it establishes our stability, and our brain responds to stability. Okay, so when we're talking about sthira sukha and that ability to experience sthira sukha, theta comes from our contact with the earth, and our brain knows when we're stable and when we're not stable, right? And it's kind of like what Christine pointed out in the article, that we may not ever be as stable as we'd like to be. Godfrey talks about that. But the moment that you notice that and you become okay with it, then your capacity can increase. But we're always sort of searching for stability. Our brain is. So what makes us more stable is greater surface area. So that's exactly what we just did. Greater surface area makes you more stable. So having more of your body in contact with the earth. And also whether you are, in terms of standing, like this Tadasana with feet, some schools, old schools, like traditional yoga schools, have taught in the past, Tadasana was a stance in which like the big toe mound touched, and it was a very narrow stance. I would see if you guys could feel that for a moment. Come to standing. This is a narrow stance, and it is a pretty unstable stance. And for a 15-year-old boy, this may be a 15-year-old, very thin boy, it may be a very appropriate stance. But for most 50-year-old women, this stance is not stable. And so now bring the center of your heels underneath your sit bones. And so that, as most of you will feel, is a more stable stance. And then you could grow a little wider, and that perhaps might even feel a little more stable. And then you might grow wider, and then you might start to feel less stable. Okay? And so just noticing how stability in stance. Some of the ways that we make a pose more complex would be challenging stability. And so you could like crumple up a blanket, okay, so then we challenge stability a lot when we go to 1 foot, of course. And then we could challenge stability an awful lot once we go to an uneven surface. So if you went and stood on a blanket and tried to balance there, it's so much harder to find the tripod. And notice how, like, when you're standing on an unstable surface, that movement that's happening in the foot, in the ankle, and we probably all experienced it when we're in more complex poses, that's also the brain searching for stability. Okay. One of the ways that, I'm going to do this to my camera again, one of the ways that we strengthen and integrate stability in asana is that we equally weight all parts of the body that are making contact with the earth. Equally weight all parts of the body that are making contact with the earth. And we'll play with that in a minute. Okay, I'm going to say one more thing before we go to that. And what's essential is that we efficiently resist gravity. And so we learned about that in terms of the tripod of the foot, right? It's heel, big toe mound, pinky toe mound, equally rated. Same thing in the hand. We have a tripod in the hand. The hand is often taught 4 points. but the true tripod of the hand is the thenar eminence. So feel that it's not right at the base of the thumb. It's this pointy part, right? Like at the lower part of the thumb, the thenar eminence, the index finger mound, and the pinky finger mound. That's the tripod of the hand. Okay. Sometimes we need to integrate the outer point of the hand for 4-point contact, but what really first has to be established within someone's hand is thenar. So we just say thumb mound, index finger mound, pinky finger mound, and we want to make sure that, see how the hand kind of cups, you know, it has that cup, it has those arches, that it's maintained. And so now we're back to the blueberry. There's a blueberry at the center of the palm. When our palm is on the ground, that is not smushed. Okay. And how we do that is that we keep the fingers, the phalanges, that's what they're called, these bones are called, in line with the metacarpals, the long bones in the palm. And what happens with a lot of people, especially in yoga, is huge splaying that takes the phalanges out of alignment of the metacarpals, and that then we begin to lose the arches of the hands. Okay, and it creates too floppy of a hand, right? We need that balance. All right.
Hey, Lauren,
Yes.
what would you say then about tenting your fingers? Would you
I would
say
say to
that
find your weight in the thumb mound, the index finger, and the pinky mound, and that fingers becoming too rigid do not create, they create over rigidity in the hands.
so if when I have my hands on the ground in a downward dog, for example, my mounds are not making contact with the floor, would you suggest that they do so
Yes.
that I can be trying to focus on those 3 points?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and unfortunately, we're not going to get too much into it in this class, but yes, as far as tripod and weight arriving in the hands and feet, those are the tripods. If you study lower and upper limbs with me in the 300, we go way deep into this subject, but absolutely these 3 points. Okay, so let's come back now and let's do all fours. So the tendency in all fours is for the weight to primarily land into the hands and for a lot less weight to come into the shins and the tops of the feet. And so here, see if you can just shift your weight forward and back. And this is what I have people do in class a lot, is shift forward and back and arrive in a place where you're equally resisting gravity through the tops of the feet, the shins, and the 3 points of the hand. Okay. You can keep a little softness at the elbow if that helps, and finding the support through the core. Right? Very easy to collapse here in the core. So there is your broadest foundation. And now we're going to make the foundation become smaller. Turn your toes under and just gently lift your knees. And still send weight from your hands to your feet to your hands. And now we are making more complex because we've added more length and lever, and we'll talk about that in terms of gravity as you come into a full plank. And again, the tendency is to have most of the weight arrive in the hands, but how can we send weight back through a very stacked, efficient core back into our legs and into our feet, and through an efficient core from our feet to the front of the body into our hands? Equally weighted through the foundation. Okay. Which now brings me to the subjects of load. So what is load? So load in the human body is how force or stress is arriving into our structure. Okay. And the force and the stress that we're feeling is from gravity arriving into our structure, right? And the weight of our structure itself, you know, how much we weigh. And I'm just going to read this. So, finding neutral in our foundation plays a crucial role in our ability to stack our bones above. So, tripod hand, tripod feet, if that's what our foundation is, if we're using both, or one or the other, if you're just using your hands in inversion, or if you're just using your feet in standing poses, when our foundational baseline pattern is collapsed in some way, this creates suboptimal patterns up the limbs and into the core and how the head is positioned. Okay, so this suboptimal load creates excess tension or laxity within our tendons and our ligaments, which are rich in proprioceptors, sending information back to the brain as to where we are in space and facilitating our motor patterns. All right, that was a big chunky sentence, and I'll break it down. What I'm saying is that when we have suboptimal patterns in our hands, in our feet, someplace is collapsed, then that information is from there going, let's just talk about the feet, okay? If our feet are pronated in, our inner arch is collapsed, then that information is also creating a change in how our knees are stacked, how our hips are stacked, how our pelvis is stacked, how our spine is stacked up to our head, okay? And when things aren't stacked well, we are putting excess tension or laxity into the tendons and the ligaments that surround those joints. And tendons, ligaments, joints are a place where, and if this will make a little more sense, if you haven't watched the pre-recorded videos, it'll make a lot more sense once you watch them. They are a place where we have a lot of proprioceptors. Proprioceptors are nerves that send information back to the brain and help us know where our body is in space and help us create a motor plan. What a motor plan is how you lift your arm, how you step off the curb, how you go up steps. If you miss a step, how are you going to adjust your body in that moment from the signal that comes from your brain to the rest of your body so that you don't fall flat? Those are motor plans. They're happening all day long in billion types of ways beyond our conscious awareness, right? So our neutral patterning of foundation sends information to the brain that creates a lot of strength in our motor planning and within our whole system, okay? So if the foundation is continually loaded in an unbalanced manner, it will influence from the foot, it will influence the ankles, the knees, the hips, the pelvis, and all the way up. And from the hands, if it's continually out of balance, it's going to, or imbalance, it's going to influence the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, and the shoulder girdle, okay? So the goal is not to live in neutral all the time, but the goal is to be able to access it and to move in and out of it easily because it's a baseline that's been integrated within our nervous system. It's something that our nervous system understands where home base is, and then it gives us the ability to move in and out of it very freely. So that's why in asana, one of really strong movement patterns that we want to establish and we want to help other people establish and we want to be able to see, and we'll keep working on this, is what is their neutral at their foundation. Questions?
I had a question just on the, like the plank, for example, for trying to, like, if you're trying to stack your shoulders over your, wrists, it's just geometrically impossible to have your weight distributed between your feet and your hands the same, just because your center of mass is, closer to your hands, so you're gonna have more weight. But how do you, like, would you want to lean back and not stack it to get that weight balanced, or should
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're talking about load. Yes.
you? Okay.
And you're right. You can't equally distribute load, but you can send that motor programming back into your feet because the load so easily arrives at your wrists.
Mm.
It would be easy and unseen, right? We're always looking for what is unseen. It would be very easy and unseen, and people live like that where they just let everything arrive into the wrists there. And so it takes that facilitated integrated core to then find the length through the legs and to root through the feet. And what we do in plank is it's like you're sending weight back and forth in stillness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I felt that kind of with when engaging the core, like it kind of put some of that back in the feet, but just wanted to clarify, we're still trying to stack the joints.
Yes, you are still stacking the joints.
Okay,
Yes, absolutely.
thank
Did
you.
that make sense to everybody else? Okay.
I have a quick question for, I guess, generically speaking, if you have foot or hand or wrist or ankle injuries, then what kind of support methods can we recommend for people to stabilize those? Because it kind of sounds like those 4 anchors are the foundation of everything else, right? So those might be the first to note.
Well, what I would say is that you always have to be careful about load if there is any injury. So we certainly only want to be appropriately loading joints to their capacity if they have injury. And there's lots of ways to find the expression of the tripod without it being loaded. And so even, and that's where like proprioception or something would come in, where maybe you're not ready to put weight on the wrists, but you could work with a block to find those 3 points in all different manners where you're not actually having force arrive at the joint if it's not ready for it. Does that help?
Definitely. Yeah. And for the
Yeah.
feet, would you recommend something similar with a block in the back on
Yeah,
one?
well, but one of the things that we do with feet a lot, so, um, and this is an important thing about feet, is find a strap. So we work with straps a lot. Is that when I have anyone work with a strap, I always have it go around the big toe mound and the pinky toe mound, okay? Because then you're finding that. But you still really want people to be equally reaching through the heel. So they're still feeling the tripod or finding the tripod, even when you're working with a strap.
And when it comes to something where you're anchoring across all 4, is it intentional that you are recommending a block for the wrists anchoring because it's kind of equal weight distribution? And is there something that we should look to for the feet as well, as opposed to one or the other? Like if you had a wrist injury, maybe you would put it up on one block, but you're saying you recommend.
Oh,
Just-
I'm not saying loading the wrist at all if you have a wrist injury.
Okay.
Until something's really healed, you shouldn't be necessarily placing weight, because if you have an injury, then the joint will collapse.
Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Thank you.
sure. Okay. All right, we're going to do 2 more and then we're going to move on. All right, so the next thing are one is called chain expansion. You'll hear this in terms of movement principle. And it's a lot of these things we're kind of saying the same thing, but chain expansion is that all joints are related to the ones below and above them, right? Via multi-muscle joints and via fascia. So when it comes to chain expansion, when we efficiently stack, and chain expansion really is talking about the axial skeleton. And so that is our central axis. With chain expansion, we are creating this integration. This is the same thing as being just stacked. We are stacked in a way that we are decompressing our skeleton. All right, that's chain expansion. Now, another term that's really commonly used is called kinetic chain. And what kinetic chain speaks to is primarily the limbs. All right. And we can have open kinetic chain or closed kinetic chain. And what that means is that what is happening at the distal end, the very end of the limb, is either fixed to something or not. Okay? So right now, my hand is not fixed to anything, and it gives more freedom between the joints. But once my hand is fixed to something, say this was a wall and it was fixed to it, then that relationship between the joints becomes more, each one influences the other more. And we see that, right, with tripod hand and tripod foot. If the foot is not well supported one way or another, it's going to influence the joints above in a closed chain situation. Okay. And whether the chain is open or the chain is closed will either make a pose harder or it will make it easier. And there's no one way. Sometimes it can make it easier, sometimes it can make it harder. But let's do warrior 3. And how we're going to do warrior 3 is a closed chain warrior 3, where you would use blocks under both hands, and you're going to have to get close enough to a wall where your back foot is up against a wall for closed chain warrior 3. Now, how our joints are stacking very much influences, and how they're meeting the surface that they're making contact with influences the joints above very clearly. And we might find that this, in this particular situation, is an easier pose than when we go to more of an open chain warrior 3. Okay, so that's closed chain. And now let's do open chain warrior 3. So the bottom foot will still be closed chain, of course, because it is touching the earth. But now open chain warrior 3. Is different. So less feedback coming into the hands and feet, less stability to a certain extent. All right, last 2 things that I'm going to talk about too, it has to do with lever. Levers have to do with how far our appendages are away from our core. And so for Navasana, boat pose, legs lifted, arms lifted, even arms up high. Ooh, that's long lever. We have a lot of movement away from the core. Now we can make the lever shorter by, let's bring our arms back behind us. And we've taken the arms out of the picture. We can bend our knees, shorter lever. We can bring both feet down, shorter lever. We can lift one leg, right? So all these ways that we can play with how far and how long our levers are and change the complexity and the work within the pose. And very last one is planes of space. So it's one thing for me to do high lunge in sagittal plane with my arms and my spine. But if I decide to change that plane now, and let's say I go into frontal plane with my hips, my spine, my arms, that really changes things. Or if I go into transverse plane with my spine, making it more complex. All right, so just different ways to analyze movement. Any questions with that before we move on? No? All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of vinyasa krama. And let me find my little sequences. Okay, here we go. So vinyasa krama, I'm going to show you the goal pose that we're going into. And then we're going to do a short little sequence to get to that goal pose. And instead of me cueing you how I would in terms of being a yoga teacher, I'm going to tell you the why behind why I'm choosing these poses to get you there. Okay. But I'll do a quick little review. So Vinyasa Krama, in determining the decisions I'm making in creating a practice, I'm first analyzing a goal posture, and I'm looking at what I'm asking for from the joints. So when we break down a goal posture and look at the actions that we're asking of the joints, we can think about how can we ask the body to create these same actions in more stable and less complex ways than the goal. In my mind, this is how I think now, after years of practicing Vinyasa Krama, teaching Vinyasa Krama, is that I'm not really teaching a pose. I'm not teaching this thing that people have to have look like in this certain way. What I am teaching is an integrated set of actions that create a shape. And the way this shape looks for Audrey, Lauren, Samantha could be very different. But if it's integrated into their form, then that's the pose. It's an integrated set of actions that come together that create a shape. And this moves us away from the illusion that a pose is supposed to look like something that we saw on the cover of Yoga Journal. It's an experience of integrated actions that meet us at our capacity. What my teacher says is that, one of my teachers says, is we are teaching people to thrive and not just to survive. So if you are working within your capacity in that moment and creating actions that are available to you in that moment, then the experience should be one of thriving and not one of surviving. And how many of us know what it feels like to be in asana and feel like we are barely surviving? Me. Right? So maybe we can begin to change that a little. All right. So we're going to start where we are going. The goal pose, you don't have to do the goal pose if your body doesn't feel ready for it yet, but the goal pose is bow posture. Okay. And so it's knee flexion. Some people can have a neutral ankle. I really can't. It's deep. It's hip extension. It's back extension. It's deep shoulder extension. Okay. So we're going to start first in a wide pose of a child. Come back. And, only practice to the capacity that feels right for you tonight. No need to perform all these actions in any kind of deep way. We're just honoring where we're at. We're going to walk our torso off to one side into a lateral bend. And we're going to do that through both sides. The reason I would take you first into a lateral side bend is that opening laterally is great for and essential for back bending. Okay, so opening the ribs. There should always be some frontal movement. And when we continue to explore Vinyasa Krama, we'll look at these preparations a little more deeply. So this one doesn't speak so much to specific joint action, but I just wanted to put it in there from the beginning. Good. So making sure you do both sides. From there, we're going to come to lie on our belly. Forehead on the earth, bring your hands open wide next to the chest, root down through the tops of the feet. Let's just do some shoulder rolls. So warm up the shoulder joints and move the shoulder blades. Feel the shoulder blades sliding and gliding against the shoulders. They need to have mobility for this pose. And then I would probably take some time with someone with their head down to begin to find core integration in this pose. And why? Because gravity is bearing down on your back here. And it's really easy for the front of the core to be collapsed. It's very easy for the front of the core to be collapsed in bow pose. Very hard to find once you get to that most complex place. So this is a great place to, these are the ways I think about it. Do some pelvic tilts, find a neutral pelvis, and find that tone of the low belly, maintaining support and finding breath through the ribs. From here, as you maintain that, drawing up into low cobra, inhaling to open and lift, exhaling to come down, and moving in and out that way as you maintain support in the core. I do a lot of in and out movements, dynamic movements to prepare for stillness. And then once you're ready, holding a lifted cobra. Feel the parts of the body that are making contact with the earth. You don't have to root too intensely, but just finding a sense of equally rooting. So if I said equally weighted, maybe that's not the right word. It would be equally rooting through the tops of the feet and the hands. Maintaining support through the front body of the core, opening to the heart. Good. And then from here, we come up into Sphinx pose. Now, would I necessarily go directly from Cobra to Sphinx? No, I might do a little compensation. I might come to all fours and do some cat-cow, but we're just not doing all the compensations tonight. Next, coming into Sphinx. So a lot of those same exact principles here, the front body can really dump down. And so neutralizing the pelvis, finding support through the core as you're in a deeper back bend, right? You can lift the pelvic bone towards the low ribs, keep the low ribs in the body, find breath in the back body. And then use the forearms to gently draw back towards the hips to help increase the openness at the chest as the shoulder blades draw onto the back a little more. Good. And then from here, come down, forehead on the ground. We're going to reach the right arm out to the side, palm flat, left hand in cobra position next to the chest. Turn your gaze towards your left hand, hug your legs together like you have one leg, and slowly roll off to the right as you walk your fingers towards the right. So now you're bringing your arm into deep extension, very similar to that of bow. Hug the legs towards each other, and again, find that integration of the core, keeping the hips back. And now use your hands here to press equal resistance into the earth. And so the right hand would be pressing weight back into the left would be pressing weight back into the right, and reaching long. Good. Come through center and switch. So right hand close to the body, left arm reaches away, turn your gaze to the right, and roll here. And send weight back and forth. Keep the hips stacked. It's really normal for that top hip to roll off and behind. So see if, notice where your pelvis is. Maintain neutral pelvis, integrated core, and press weight forward and back. And then I would probably have people move in and out. So come through center, switch arms, switch your gaze. And as you come in, it's like you're resisting the movement by sending. I want to say weight because that's what I usually say, but now I'm questioning it. As you send, I'm going to use the word weight, send weight into the opposite hand and move in and out a couple of times. So you're staying really stacked, connected through the core, opening the shoulders. And here, being very specific about how the shoulders open. Good, one more time. Come back to center. And we'll return first to Sphinx. And then from Sphinx, you'll take the left arm and bring it out in front, parallel to the front of the mat. Find the support through the pelvis and the core. Bend the right knee, take the right hand, and reach back. Here, feeling the parts of the body that are making contact with the earth and rooting down. And the principle that I would begin to teach here would be kicking the leg into the hand and resisting with the hand so that you're finding length through the spine by using that resistance of kicking and resisting through the arm and the leg. And then we'll switch sides. And so it's good to think about, like, what is the why you're teaching to at the end of the goal? You know, in Dhanurasana, people could just overarch, overextend in this pose, but how do you still find the opposition, the length, right? And so it would be very easy here to collapse in the core. So you've taught that before in an easier pose, teach it again here in a more complex pose, and add the resistance of the limbs to help integrate it even more.
Lauren, can I ask a quick question? Is there a reason you're catching the inside of your foot when in bow we actually text the outside?
I know, I thought about that earlier. You could, for sure. That's a habit of mine.
Okay.
So yes, that is better. That's just a habit of mine. Okay, and then from there, let's come back. You need to breathe into your back body. This is the place where you could do some compensation again, like doing some windshield wipe from the belly. And here we'd set up like we did before, where forehead down, right arm long, left hand close to the body, hug the legs towards each other, roll to the right side, get stacked, and now lift the top leg, bend the knee, and reach it back. And try and do so by finding that extension in the hip and not just dropping that pelvis back. And use the right arm to push weight back towards the left. Grow long through the spine. Try to, the pelvis is naturally being drawn into extension. So how do we find support? Drawing gently in the opposite way. Come through center and switch. So first set up with the arms, send resistance in both directions, lift the top leg and reach back. And then you could do it dynamically if you wish. Back and forth. And then from here, come to lay on your belly. Bend the knees. Grab the tops of the feet. And before you even begin to lift, come back to what's happening at the core. So can you find more stability in the pelvis? Can you integrate the front of the core? Can you kick the arms and the legs into each other and grow long through the spine as the body draws you up into extension? And that's bow pose. So before we go on to the next little vinyasa krama, any thoughts, questions about that?
Lauren,
Yes.
can you kind of return again and again, like even when you're on your belly, holding your two tops of your feet, can you do the pelvic bowl, like forward edge of like the balance of that pelvic bowl, even in that position?
Yes, you can do it again and again and again and again. Absolutely.
Okay.
And you can't live in neutral pelvis in that position. That is a position of extension. But
Mhm.
what is going to bring balance is finding the opposite. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So even in a sense, even though your pelvic bowl is spilling the water out the front, essentially, you can have that sense of drawing the pelvic bowl back in a sense.
And
Yeah.
what that is opposing collapse.
Yeah. Like an anchor. Or maybe an anchor is not a great word.
You're just opposing the collapse. It's
Yeah.
opposition. It's sthira sukha, right? Sukha is
Yeah.
taking you there. Gravity is taking you there. The shape is taking you there. And so you don't need to go there anymore. The whole thing is taking you there. And so how you find balance is with a bit of the opposite,
Mm, mm. It's like
right?
the little
Because
dot in the yin yang symbol.
yeah, and asana is always teaching us how to resist gravity. And so if we did that pose without any resistance, again and again and again and again, what we are teaching our system is this, right? But that's not how we want to live with gravity. I want to live like this, more so. Because it all comes back to Tadasana. It all comes back to postural neutral. It all comes back to how we stack, because that's our baseline. Yes, can we go out of our baseline? We can in so many amazing, cool ways. But we have to have that integrated awareness. It's not even awareness, that integration within our nervous system of where baseline is. And then we're back there when we're not thinking about it. Because the majority of time, we're not thinking about it. We're walking down the street, we're picking up our kids, we're sitting at our desks, you know. We want a strong baseline. It works, it makes us more efficient. We expend less energy, and then we have more prana for all the things. And most essentially in yoga, philosophically, we comes back to then we have prana for our svadharma, which is our life's purpose. And we have prana to be of service. Okay. Any more questions about that one? No? All right, let's do one more. Where are we? Okay, pretty good with time. A little bit longer one. Okay, come to lie on your back.
Hey,
Step
Lauren,
your feet flat.
what's the
Yeah.
goal pose that we're
Oh,
doing?
thank you. Yes, that's really important. All right, goal pose. Goal pose is revolved high lunge, and with the option of hands like this in prayer. Or I was like checking out that pose that we were looking at of my teacher the other day, where Samantha brought it up about his hands, where one palm is a fist and one palm is an extension. Okay, that's the goal pose. And to lie on your back, step your feet flat. And you can start to inform people right away into the 3 points of their feet, right? They're not loaded. It's a really easy place to start to feel into that. Palms face each other. Inhale, reach the arms back. Try to maintain the natural curves of the spine. Try not to splay the ribs. And as you exhale, arms come down, tone the belly, float the shoulders, neck, and head up. Inhale, grow long, vertebra by vertebra. As you come back down to the earth, you can use your feet to root into the earth to modulate yourself as you come back down, growing long. Exhale, deep tone of the belly to rise up. Inhale, grow long. And with your next exhalation, reach both arms over to the right side of your thigh. So you're coming into a little twist here. Inhale, grow long. Exhale. Next side. Good. Coming down. Let's keep the fingertips pointing up towards the sky and let's come to dead bug now. Good. Find that the sacrum is rooted, natural curves of the spine. Inhale, reach your arms back. Keep your legs. You can hug your legs together like you have one leg. Keep the knees over the hips, the ankles in line with the knees. Exhale, tone the low belly and rise up first, straight ahead. Inhale to lower, exhale, and twist again as we did before. Come once to the right. Try to stay real stable in the legs. Exhale, tone the low belly, come off to the left. Good, come back down. And now here, reach your right leg straight. Reach your arms back. And with your exhalation, without moving the legs, exhale. Should have done the other leg, the opposite side, but that's okay. Exhale, tone the belly, rise up and reach both arms to the left. Inhale, bring your legs back together. Exhale, next side. Left leg straight. And come to the right. And can you see here, this is similar to the shape of a high lunge with a twist. And come back. All right, so we've just done a lot of core work
But-
and also core with twist.
Can I ask why were you twisting toward the straight leg instead of the bent leg?
No, we're not. We're twisting towards the bent leg.
Oh, I thought you said it the other way. Okay.
No. Maybe I did. But yeah, you're twisting towards the bent leg. The last time I did it, I switched the sides that we went to by accident. Okay, and then from here,
Are we twisting towards the bent leg? Just curious.
you're twisting towards the bent leg. Yep. Okay.
But why is that?
Because you're twisting towards the bent leg.
Right, of course, yeah. Okay,
See it?
thank you.
Yep. Okay. And now here, let's come onto our belly. And let's do some shoulder rolls. And then draw up into low cobra. And come down. So move in and out a couple times. And now the reason I would do cobra here is because when people typically come into this kind of pose, where they're flexing at the hips, they're twisting, and their arms are abducting, they tend to flex their spine. And so helping people first open their chest and find a little extension will help them not to get too rounded in that final goal pose. Good. From here, coming up, come to sit on the knees. Bring your hands together into prayer. And let's find those 3 points. Base of the thumb, index finger, pinky finger mound, pressing equally into each other as we reach the elbows out to the side. From here, let's turn our toes under. And your choice, if you're able to sit all the way back on your heels or not, you can keep your hands on a block or on the ground. If you can sit all the way back on the heels with the toes turned under, notice what's happening at the ankles. Do your heels want to fall out to one side? If so, take a little weight off and stay there so that you feel that you're clearly reaching the center of your heel towards the back of the room as you turn your toes under. If you're able to sit up, let's try this. Press one hand as a fist into another hand that's extended. Roll along at the spine. And then switch. Feeling that equal weight arriving at the center. Good. I think it's very underrated. You can come off to not prepare people for the deep extension. Where's the look? We are asking of them at their toes when they do poses like this. A lot of people don't have strong, like they're very rigid at the toes. And so then here you're asking for a ton of toe extension, right? And so doing some preparation can be really, really helpful for then how, because when they don't have good toe extension, then what it looks like is falling to one side or the other side, maneuvering around that lack of toe extension, right? So then it falls into some other joint up the chain. Okay. So from here, let's come back to all fours. Thread the needle. Inhale, left arm up. And exhale to twist. Okay, so we have weight arriving into lots of areas of the body. Let's keep the right palm flat on the earth right now and press the right palm and the left shoulder gently away from the earth as you send weight back into the shins and the tops of the feet. Use the shins and the tops of the feet to send weight towards the front of the body. Use the front of the body that's touching the earth to send weight towards the back of the body, bringing more length and stability to the spine as you rotate. Notice how the pelvis here naturally wants to collapse. See if you can return the pelvis back to neutral as much as possible. Notice if you have more weight on your left shin than your right. And growing long. And then from here, you could play with perhaps bending the lower left arm in extension with the wrist and taking the top hand into a fist and pushing against the lower hand. And here you are in that shape. Applying resistance. Good. Coming out, next side. If you need to do a cat-cow in between, please do so. Right arm up and exhale to twist. And so you got to set it up first where you're feeling them sending weight forward and back, finding support through the core, staying long through the spine. It's very easy to collapse here at the collarbones. The collarbones can just crumble on top of each other. And so you're actually trying to really stack the collarbones here, stay open in the chest, and then bend the right elbow, extend the right wrist. Take the left hand into a fist and push. They're pushing against each other. And when you're ready, coming out. From here, we'll make our way to standing. And of course, there's all different things you can do to get yourself to standing. And there's all kinds of things I think of playing with here. You could just play with, hands together, 3 points of the hands reaching into each other, elbows reaching out, that equal weight pressing into each other, because you really want that in that final close where the hands are finding resistance into each other. And then from here, just rising up slow off the heels and back down as you remain stacked in the core. Starting to just work with some balance. Good, and from here, arms up. And let's Exhale, left arm forward, right arm back. And as we twist, try to keep the hips pointing straight ahead and finding the twist above the waist as you turn your gaze to the right. Good. And moving in and out, arms come to the top. Exhale to twist. Resist twisting at the hips. Keep the weight equal at the 3 points of the feet and finding the twist above the waist. And that's really what you want in the pose too, right? You don't want the hips dropping one way or another. You want people to be able to access the twist more in the thoracic spine. Good. And then from here, let's grab our blocks. Bring them to the short edge of the mat. Inhaling, arms up. Exhale, forward fold, bend your knees as much as you need to. Inhale, grow long, and we'll sit the hips down and back into Utkatasana as we find the equal weight 3 points of the feet. Start with the hands at the hips. Find that the core is stacked. Notice your tendency if you wanted to spill out the front or spill out the back. See if you can do some pelvic tilt. Slowly begin to lift the arms. Good. Bring your arms back down. Stay in Utkatasana. Take a wide step back with your right foot into a straight leg lunge. Walk your blocks back so that your shoulders are over your wrists. Grow long here. And with your exhalation, lower your back knee. Keep your back toes turned under. Inhale, arms up. And stability. Good. Return your hands to the blocks. Straight leg lunge. Inhale, rising up. Helping them to find stability here. All the things that you would say, send your weight forward and then back. Neutralize the hips as much as possible. Bend the back knee if you need to. Hands down. Step forward, forward fold. Inhale, grow long, sit your hips down and back. Utkatasana. Rise up. Hands to the heart. Inhaling, arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, grow long. Sit your hips back. Utkatasana. Hands down, step back, left leg, straight leg lunge. Lower the back knee. Keep the back toes turned under. Rise up. So, right, this is less complex than this next one as we step forward because we have less surface area connected. Send weight forward and back. People have to find stability here before they can enter into the pose. Exhale, step forward. Inhale, sit the hips down and back. I'm going to move kind of fast. This isn't exactly, of course, how I would teach it. Utkatasana. And now we're going to release the right arm and twist over to the right. And you can try extending the palm of the lower hand, bringing a fist to the upper hand. Try to keep equal weight, grow long through the spine. Utkatasana. Come through center. Hands to the block. Step back, right foot. Lower the knee. So I should have gone the other way. Sorry, let's switch. Right foot forward, left leg back. Lower the back knee. Inhale, rise up. And here, lower the right arm. Hinge forward. And so we've kind of been here before already. Hands to the block. Straight leg lunge. Lift the arms up. Lower the right arm. Hinge forward. And using the hands in that way. Good. One more time. Opposite leg. We'll step forward, forward fold. Inhale, grow long, sit your hips back. rise up Utkatasana and twist the opposite way. So we'll lower, left arm hinge forward, come across, and twist. And here you can feel, this is where you could really speak to the cobra from the beginning, where it'd be very easy to round into this posture, but finding that same extension, openness in the cobra pose. Good, forward fold. Step back right leg. Lower the back knee. Inhaling arms up. Release the left arm, hinge, then twist and find the resistance. Coming out. Rise up into a straight leg lunge. Oh, and a much more complex pose at the end, with lots of preparation along the way. Stepping forward, forward fold. And let's just rise up from there. So I kind of did that. What extremely fast. I would never teach it that fast. And I would have a lot of compensation happening in between. But that gives you a sense of how you've prepared from more simple to more complex. So any questions or thoughts about that?
So it's
Everybody,
it's really just like breaking down the final pose into mini movements beforehand, like the same similar movements.
into specific joint actions.
Okay.
Yes, it is. You are looking, you are taking the goal pose and you're looking at the joint actions you are asking of the body in that final goal pose. And then you are doing those same joint actions in more stable, simpler ways. Step by step, with increasing the complexity and the challenge of foundation.
Mhm. So
And
when
sorry.
we kind of like during the power flow, when we go into a revolve crescent, like how do we prep for these, or like
Okay,
it's
I'll
just
be
kind of
totally honest. I am not a trained Namaspa teacher, and I've never done a power flow. I have practiced for a really long time. My primary practice now is a personal practice. So I can't really, I guess my answer to that question is I can't speak to it specifically. And Vinyasa Krama is not part, power flow comes from Baron Baptiste. I don't know his philosophy on sequencing or his training around sequencing. Why I'm giving you guys Vinyasa Krama is so that you can create your own sequences, and that will happen more if you are a Namaspa teacher, that would happen more in healing flow classes, yin classes, where there's a much wider breadth of how you sequence, right? Maybe you could speak to this,
And
Pratik?
soulful flow and healing flow for sure.
Yeah.
And yin is less of a flow, but you
Oh.
can tend to that more. If you think of our power flow, you tapping more into like Ashtanga, where you're like, this is how it came about, whereas this pose and that pose and that pose, and the salutations and then salutations B. And so things are building, but it's less specific, I would say, as Vinyasa Krama, where you're really going, this is my peak pose, and we're gonna do all these specific things in order to get there. It's a different, it draws from different background.
This is different style, different background. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
But if you really go into it, you're seeing how you're warming up a lot of different ways to get to certain things. You might find like, wow, I'm learning all this. I prefer healing flow and soulful flow because I can tend to this more. Or yeah, I'm gonna, build a different sort of space, I guess, that you hold for the body in power flow. Although all of these insights that are coming from Lauren are essential to all the flows. So.
And you can speak to things. That way you're deciding what you're speaking to, no matter like, if you know this is where you're going in power flow, then you might choose certain things that you're speaking to in those previous poses to help people have their awareness and how they're sensing into their bodies prepared for where they're going. It is an organizing tool. It is about, it helps us to just become more methodical. And Vinyasa Krama, once you read it, it doesn't just pertain to yoga. Vinyasa Krama is how you approach any goal in a methodical way that makes sense, so that whatever step you're going to, you are preparing for that step previously. And so there's lots of ways, like you don't have to just do it based on joint actions for yoga sequencing. You can Vinyasa Krama for a breath. You can Vinyasa Krama for a chakra. You can Vinyasa Krama to however your creativity makes sense of it. However, when it comes to this concept of accessing our, like knowing our capacity and accessing our capacity, joint actions, because of how joints communicate to the communication between joints and our brain. When you prepare joints, the nervous system and the brain has a much more holistic, integrated ability to access movement. And so there's something incredibly intelligent about working with joint actions and then just seeing what's truly available in your joints. Because if you're going into, like we just said, that's a very complicated pose. Maybe not for all of us here because we've done it a bunch, but for the majority of the population, like there is so much going on in that posture. And to me, like if you haven't prepared the toes, we're asking so much of them. And then the poses like that or like that, then the whole thing, whew, it's so much harder to be stable. And the brain goes, I don't like this. Or this isn't, then we have this whole experience that is surviving and not thriving.
So these could be as long and complicated, or they can be just a few movements. Is that right? Or
sure, absolutely. So what I was trying to show you guys there is like if that was my peak pose for a class, I certainly wouldn't have done it in that order. That I would have had compensations and woven in other things in between. That was just the most, like a very direct way, because we only have so much time together, to show you guys how to do it. But I think it's a really great place to start. So, which leads me into, I don't usually give you guys homework, but you are going to have some homework. And your homework is, and I'll write it out, I'll send it in the email. I'm going to include the movement principles handout. I'm going to include the handout, which is called Vinyasa Krama 2, which is going to give you guys more information about how to prepare. But I'm going to have you guys each do 3 short sequences, like a minimum of 7 poses. And we're going to pick a pose with a neutral spine. We're going to pick a pose. Okay, you can do, there's 4 spine shapes you can do. You pick 3. So there's neutral, there's lateral, side bend, there's revolved, and there's extension, right? Back bend. So pick 3, figure out your goal pose, and do some short sequences. We're gonna have 3 of those. And when we all meet together next YTT, we're gonna split into groups and we're gonna talk about our sequences and explain to each other how we got there and what our thinking was behind it and help each other look at it.
I also wanted to say real quick to all of you, because I know you are like, you're learning those of you in YTT, learning the power flow, and then you're talking to Laura and she's like, I've never even done the power flow. But I'm sure you're feeling how, what she means by all of this is the body, and whatever flow you're doing in whatever studio or however you're teaching, this is the body and how it works and what we're speaking, what we're learning. Also know that on our schedule down the road is me teaching a power flow with Lauren there with insight and all this connection, making the connection between those two in our bodies. Is that right, Lauren?
Yeah, we're gonna do a power flow and then we're gonna talk about like the principles you could think about that we've been learning within these poses. So we'll keep making sense of these concepts within that flow.
Thank you.
All right, we have just 2 more minutes. Any final thoughts, questions?
One just quick thought I had is it always feels like not collapsing is just a general concept that, because the power flow is fast, but if you really established that concept of opposition and lack of collapse to really integrate that, the foundation, those 3 things, foundation, opposition, lack of, watch the collapse, wherever that can show up. I feel like that's what you could integrate. I don't know. That's my first thoughts.
All I want to do is like scream yay, because that's what I'm teaching. Like if you come back to those principles, and I would say opposition and watch the collapse is the same principle. It's the same thing, right? It's stira sukha. That's why this class is called The Art of Opposition. We are always looking for the opposite. We are integrating the opposite. The yin, the yang, the antidote is the opposite, right? What's hidden. So those 2 things, foundation and opposition. In any pose, if you can start to figure out what you are opposing, where is gravity arriving in your body, and how do you oppose it, your postures will become stronger and more efficient. And the more you can see it in others, you begin to understand the body more. Because the body is always looking for what does one of my teachers say? It's like the easiest way. And we have to resist that. We have to find how not to just yoga is another definition for yoga is to push against. We push against the desire to sit on the couch and eat bonbons all day long, right? Wouldn't we love to do that? you know, to a certain degree. But we have to push against for life. And then we find the right amount of energy to do that with.
My son just said, I don't push against that.
Well, that's because Talis has already got it all figured out. All right, everyone. Well, I hope this was useful, interesting, informative, not too annoying.
Hey, Lauren, I wondered if we could, if people wanted to, but no need to, but to kind of try out that chat thing of what is a takeaway from the session today? Like what resonated with you? Like from everybody here, like I'm wondering what part of this kind of session, this practice is standing out for everybody. You know, you talked about the article, talked about foundation, talked about the tripod. So I guess,
Sure, if
yeah,
you
let's
want to
not-
do
let's
that before
not
you
work.
jump off, it would be really informative to us, to the TAs and myself, to just understand the takeaway.
Or a
Yay,
question. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lauren.